All right. Thanks for joining our webinar today, brought to you by Fortra. We're going to be talking about how you can make the most of your Powertech antivirus. And I really thought this was timely to talk about the best practices for maximizing the protection of this really critical layer of security for your IBMI. Powertech Antivirus is one that is been around for a very long time, but it is often something that you don't necessarily think about every day. Security is not normally a set it and forget it, but this can be. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody had this opportunity to understand what it can do, what you should be doing with it, and give you that information. My name's Sandi Moore. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Fortra. I've been working with the Powertech Antivirus tool since its inception in 2003. And I am a 2025 IBM Champion, so that was kind of exciting, being recognized for that. Security on IBMI is near and dear to my heart. I live and breathe it. If you ever have a conversation with me, I don't stop talking about it. It should be some good information, and I do enjoy feedback as we go through. So if you do have anything, let me know. Fortra brings to the Powertech Security Solution Suite, and one of those pieces is the native virus protection, Powertech Antivirus. Powertech Antivirus runs on IBMI, AIX, Linux on Z, and Linux One. My focus today is antivirus for IBMI, and that's what we're going to cover. But I really wanted to highlight that there are antivirus products for the other operating systems. So if you have other systems on Power, that is something that we're going to be able to cover as well. We're going to talk about the features that we have available in the product that you may or may not know about, your virus protection and how you should be configuring it and best practices there, advanced scanning strategies, so some tips on making things work better for you based on your environment. Everybody's got a little bit different thing going on. Ransomware protection, which was added, I think it was about 4 years ago now. Additional functionality that is in the tool that you might not know about, as well as some resources for where to look for more information after we get off the webinar today. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump right in to features. Of course, native virus scanning. That is the mainstay of the Powertech Antivirus tool, and I'm sure you guys all know that we do native virus scanning. So this is where you're going to be able to scan the file system, the integrated file system for malware, ensuring that it's not hosting malware out to your end users. Super happy host, it will pass it along without showing any symptoms. But there's also the malicious behavior analysis, monitoring, and control. So this is that anti-ransomware piece, and what it does is it has a signatureless engine that is going to monitor the behavior of the users connecting through the file server. And you can define thresholds that are your tolerance for how much of this behavior before it actually reacts. We also have canary file tampering. And that malicious behavior analysis really, with the canary file, it's looking for threat actors that are poking around in your environment, looking for valuable information to hold for ransom or threaten to expose if you don't pay that ransom. Exfiltration is a huge threat, and having data that is left your control is never a good thing. This is going to give that a little bit of extra oomph to your protection. If somebody is poking around, they attempt to tamper with the file, they're going to get blocked automatically. You're going to have that reaction. There's also native OS object integrity scanning. This one is addressing the native objects on your system and ensuring that they are, in fact, not tampered with. And this is something we'll dive into a little bit deeper towards the end, give you a little bit more information on that. Another feature that you may not know about is the QMSF mail scanning. We run into a lot of customers that are mailing information off of their IBMI system. And you want to make sure that you're actually scanning those files before they leave and making sure that you're not sending anything off the system that would be inappropriate. Last piece you might not be aware of is a web interface through our Fortra application hub, and I'll show you guys a sneak peek of that as well. All right, let's dive right into the virus protection. I think this, of course, is, as I mentioned, is the biggest piece, and it's the one that we are most familiar with. The idea behind it is that Powertech Antivirus is going to run natively on the system, scanning your files for any malware. You think, back in the early 2000s, there was a lot of malware going around on a lot of systems. Protections have gotten better, layers have gotten better, but this malware can still be sitting on these systems. We see it all the time. But new malware is introduced into environments. It can get to your server without being detected because it hasn't been identified yet. So this is really where it's so critical to scan your native system, at the core server, and ensure that it's not hosting that malware. We're going to be doing that, and it's going to do on-access scanning or on-demand scanning, and it ties into the infrastructure of the operating system. We need to make sure that it's configured correctly. Now, I wanted to share with you guys some recent malware we found. These are some web shells that were present on a customer system, and one of my services team members found these on this system. Web shells are going to give remote access to a threat actor, to your environment. So having a web shell hosted on your IBM I that's acting as your web server, that's not good. So it is so important, and those threats are still happening, and we continue to see them and find them on systems. Really important that you guys keep this configured correctly and that you are maximizing its ability. All right, so let's make sure that we have gone through all of the configurations to ensure that it is, in fact, set up right. So I'm actually going to run through a checklist here. I've given you guys the menu options as well. So as you go back and review the recording and you're going to do your own little health check here, you'll be able to easily find each of these things that I'm going to mention. First thing, of course, is to make sure you're running the most current version of the software. We do validate Powertech Antivirus against each new OS level. So you guys have, if you've already moved to V7R6 or planning to, the latest and greatest version is 8.13, and it is validated for that OS. So make sure you check your version, keep it current. The information about versions is going to be available in our support portal, and I will cover that towards the end of the webcast today. License codes. Powertech Antivirus runs with 2 license keys. These license keys are going to control the ability to run scans, but also to update virus definitions. So there needs to be 2 keys in there, and sometimes those get overlooked. So every year you should be getting some keys, and you need to make sure you're adding those so that the product is working as it's designed. There's 2 system values that we're tying into, the QScan file systems and this QScan file systems control. These 2 system values are going to allow for the scanning to work properly. So we need to make sure that the configuration is correct. The QScan file systems should have Q OpenSys user-defined file systems. So that's a specific setting that allows us to actually scan your file systems. If it's set to star none on that QScan file system value, things aren't going to work. The QScan file systems control, this system value is actually going to allow us to control how the scanning is going to trigger. So we're going to, when you installed the software, it would have changed it to file server only and possibly use on change only attribute. So there might be 2 attributes there. You might have had to add a 3rd one if you're running some high availability software that ran into some concerns there. So there might be another system value, but most cases, QScan file systems control should not be set to star none. If you have Powertech encryption implemented, we need to talk, because that, if you're using the integrated file system encryption and encrypting your IFS files and directories, we have a little bit of a different strategy for you. So those things need to be set correctly in order for the software to function as it should. Your exit points. So the 2 exit points that IBM added in 2003 to support this virus scanning are the scan open and scan close exit points. So the Powertech Antivirus exit program needs to be registered to at least the scan open. So you should be able to go into the support menu, option 7, and do an 8 next to the exit points and see that the scan open is registered. This is going to be the primary one that's going to be used. If you have on-access scanning turned on, you might see the the exit program registered on close. So there is that additional option there, but it's not in all cases. Your virus definitions are really critical. This is the information that's going to be downloaded from Trellix directly in most cases. So we want to make sure that this is updating daily. It should be scheduled on your job scheduler. It'll be an AV update job and running every day. You can look in the AV message queue and confirm that the virus definitions are updating as expected. If they're not, we may need to look at the configurations and figure out what's happened. The virus definition update configuration is going to be on AV menu, the setup menu, option 2. All right. So a couple different strategies we use with that if you guys have run into any issues there. There's a master scan job that runs for Powertech Antivirus, and that's the AV server job. This does all of the heavy lifting. It does your on-access scanning. So as users are opening files through the file server, whether it's map drive, shared directory through using an address in your file explorer, or if it's through any sort of application that's doing an interface with the file server, like a doc management tool, or even through the integrated file system utility in ACS, and this is where that's going to come in. So all of that scanning is being done through the AV server job. You should have it active all the time. It needs to be active all the time for all of that scanning to work. But you will see that it will restart every day when those virus definitions are updated. That's normal. It should be happening. It has to reinitialize with the most current information. Other than that, it should be active. It's going to be under your QSys work subsystem. So making sure that it's actually there, doing its job, and scanning the files before they're actually used. On-access scanning should be turned on. That's going to be your scanning as users are opening your files. You can also select an open close, which is going to be better protection, especially if you have a read-write share of your IFS, ensuring that these files are not only scanned when the user opens them, but also when they're closed with an update. So making sure that that user is not spreading malware to the system. The on-demand scan. This is really where you're telling the software to go scan these files at this time. And it should be scheduled to run weekly. That is the recommendation there. We want to make sure that you are doing that sweep of all those files that are not accessible through a share and making sure that there's no malware present in any of your directories. Any directory is vulnerable. We've seen infections in QOpenSys. We've seen infections in the QIBM directories, other third-party vendor directories. As you saw by my screenshot on the previous slide, we've also seen it in web server files. So anywhere can have that in it. So we want to make sure that you are, in fact, going through and doing that weekly sweep. And I've got some more strategies here in a few minutes that are going to help that run better within the time frame you guys have available. Make sure those are scheduled. Look at that scheduled time and ensure that it is appropriate still. And then, of course, once all this stuff is done and everything is running, you need to make sure that you're actually reviewing the results. With the on-demand scan, you're going to have a log file. So these log files are going to give you the information that is going to show you what was scanned, anything that was not scanned because maybe it was in use or it's password protected, anything like that. And then also if there were any infections, you're going to get a good idea for how much time it takes to get through that scan. And of course, monitoring the AV message queue. I can't emphasize this enough. You've got to stay on top of what's happening with the software in order to react quickly. If you have infected files that have popped up on your IBMI and your IFS, you need to know about it because there's a workstation somewhere in your environment that is compromised and you need to address it. You'll be able to see on those files in the quarantine directory who owned it, when was it placed on the system, when was it last modified. So you'll get a better picture of what has happened. All right. If you don't have a monitoring tool in place, there's tons of options available. You know, look at something like Robot Alert Console, Halcyon, System Operations Suite, even Powertech SIM Agent to get those messages out of the AV message queue and send those off to your SIM solution. You know, anything that's happening with malware on a server should be integrated into that. So that's where you're going to be able to get that information over. All right, so you've got a long checklist of things to look at here. This is what I'm going to review with you. If you do a health check with me, we're going to go through and make sure that each of these things is configured correctly and offer suggestions for tweaks where necessary, but really just want to make sure that all of these things are addressed. When we look at the scan times, you know, doing a full system scan, you can imagine you might have millions of files in your IFS. Some customers have just a standard installation and they don't have anything extra there. Others use this as a repository for image files, and it can get really big. So there's some different things you can do if you are running into scans that are running longer than you'd like, and you want to be able to get through it more efficiently. So a couple things. There is a timeout minutes on those scan tasks. So if you have that AV run task, that scan task for your full system task, you only have a short time window. Let's say you've got 6 hours on Saturday and that's the only time you want this to run. You can add a timeout. What we'll do is we're going to scan those files. We're going to scan 6 hours. When we hit that timeout, we're going to wrap up the directory we're scanning. We're going to stop and mark where we stopped. The next weekend, we'll pick up where we left off. Now, if you follow my other instructions on the checklist, you have on-access scanning turned on. So you know that you're going to be protecting the system from users who are accessing the IFS directly through the file server. So we're protecting that exposure. But this on-demand scan, that scheduled scan, is going to churn through. Might take a couple weekends to get through that full IFS, but we know that it works with the time frame you have available. Maybe there's other batch jobs that need to run. You got an IPL coming or restricted state backups. You know, anything can be at play there. So this gives you some flexibility on how long it'll actually run. You can also separate large directories into individual scan tasks. Maybe you've got some giant archive directory for all of these invoices you guys have kept over the years, and you find that it seems to where your scan spends an extraordinary amount of time. So we can actually create its own scan task, run it either concurrently or after or on a different day than your full system scan. So that's an option as well. You can also scan high-risk directories more frequently. If you have files that are being sent from a customer or a vendor and or from another IBMI system, whatever you guys might be doing, and it's being placed in the IFS, you want to make sure that you're looking at those files more frequently as they're delivered. So that's where you can add a different task to scan maybe nightly over specific directories that are higher risk. But also, if you have shared that pesky QDLS directory and you have end users actually using it still, I have some legacy situations where customers can't get rid of it because the way their application's configured. So they will do that. IBM actually doesn't support on-access scanning for your QDLS, so this is very helpful in ensuring that those infected files are not landing there and staying there. You can also use a strategy to scan files only when they've changed. So when we scan files, we update the scan status. So we scan a file, we mark it as success. It's a clean file. Now, when somebody goes in and makes a change to it, we're going to mark it as status required. We need to scan it again because it's been modified. But if you remember, we're updating your virus definitions every day. So now we have new information that we want to scan the file with. But you may not want to scan those files every day just because the virus definitions changed. You only want to scan when the file itself has been modified. So that can speed up your scans as well. We don't have to scan everything every time. And you're going to need, in order to implement that, you have to change the file scan attribute to change only. You have to change the directory attribute, create object scanning to change only. Make sure that your use on change only attribute is on that qscan file system control system value. So all of those pieces will allow for us to skip the files if they haven't changed and not scan it just because we have new virus definitions. Now, I do not recommend this strategy for shared directories. There is a potential for a zero-day threat to get onto the system, so we wouldn't want to never scan the file again until it changed. Malware doesn't change, so shared directories, I would actually leave it as is, scan attribute to yes, and not tamper with that. But for those archival directories that no one has access to, that can be a really good strategy. Matter of fact, I believe IBM is shipping a lot of their QIBM directories with that change only attribute already. So not a bad strategy, just have to be thoughtful in how you do this. All right, so scanning. We've already talked about all the scanning stuff. Let's talk about ransomware protection. So with the virus scanning, we're really focused on what's on the system and looking at the files that are in your IBM, in your IFS, and making sure there's no malware sitting there. But what about those attacks where they're not replicating malware out to the servers they're attacking? So what we've done is we have ransomware protection built in that is going to detect and block these attacks. As I mentioned at the very beginning, we did add this about 4 years ago. So if you installed Powertech Antivirus more than 5 years ago or 4 years ago, you may not have this functionality yet. So this is really where staying current on the versions and ensuring that you're doing periodic health check to make sure that the software is configured correctly is really going to be beneficial for you. So Powertech Antivirus, the anti-ransomware engine, is going to use a signatureless engine that is going to monitor the behavior of the users accessing the files through the file server. And if it detects suspicious activity, the programmatic read, rename, encrypt, delete of stream files, it's going to send you a warning message if you have that configured, and then it's also going to be able to block the attack if you have that configured. So really important piece there to stop these attacks, reduce the blast zone so that the impact from ransomware is not widespread against your IFS. Users with map drives or those shared directories that are discoverable are going to be vulnerable. And there's a longstanding assumption that you have to have a map drive. You don't. If it is discoverable and it's on the network, it can be impacted. Here's a screenshot of a customer that actually had this anti-ransomware functionality configured correctly, and they actually did have a workstation with ransomware on it. As part of an attack, it did start attacking anything that user had access to. It was able to encrypt a handful of files, dropped the actual malware on the system, and then we detected that behavior. We sent the warning message, and then we actually blocked the user. Doesn't change the user profile. It is just going to put an on-the-fly rule in the exit program that we're using to monitor this behavior that says this user no longer has access. Remediation is quick and simple. Simply remove the block. The user has their access back. It's really important. This is going to save your IFS. If you've ever been on a conversation with me, you've heard the story, the customer with 500,000 files encrypted by ransomware. Entire system down, done, kaput. We don't want this. This is where you're going to be able to detect that behavior and stop the attack before it gets to that point. You've already got other problems. The rest of the network's got issues. We don't need the IFS to be part of that. So getting this protection in place and configured correctly is going to be really crucial. Configuration checklist. First thing, make sure the exit program is registered. So this does use an exit program that is going to monitor the file server exit point for this behavior pattern. You're going to see either the StandGuard AVR WFSX exit program or the ExitInt GSC EXTFS1. You don't have to remember that. Go back and look at the recording. So those exit programs, it's going to be one or the other depending on when you installed the when you installed the version you have now. And you'll be able to determine that the exit program is in place. It has the ability to start monitoring that user behavior. If you see any other exit program here, we need to investigate a little bit further because there are other exit programs that may be present on your file server. Powertech multi-factor authentication, authenticating users when they connect to the system. We've got an exit program for file server for that. So that might be in place. You could have Exit Point Manager, our tool that's going to be allowing you to control who has access to file server. These exit programs layer really well together, but we need to do a little bit of discovery. We can also even do supplemental exit programs with third-party vendors as well. So our exit program utility is going to be able to manage that. So if you don't see one of those two, but you do have something else, let us know. We'll help you dig in to see what's going on. So once you get that exit program in place, and I have to emphasize that when this exit program is registered, you have to restart that Q server subsystem because those jobs need to start with the exit program in place so it knows to call it to start monitoring. So this is going to be a really important function. All right, once you get that in place, we're going to set the thresholds. This is using our algorithm to analyze what the user's doing. And so the send message threshold is going to simply send a message to the message queue that says, hey, this user's doing something suspicious. You might want to check into it. They may be blocked if the block threshold is set. So the send message threshold is the warning message. It's going to give you the user ID and the IP address. So you're going to know where they're coming from. If you see user Sandy, for example, coming from an IP address that is really wrong, that's a very big red flag. Second threshold is the block user. So this is actually going to block the user. Create that on-the-fly rule that says user cannot get through the file server anymore until the administrator makes reviews and allows access again. So stopping the attack. So those two thresholds should be set. By default, when we ship the software and you install it, it is set to star never. You want to make sure you're not still set to never. You also want to define canary files. So if you have file shares, I would recommend creating a canary file in the parent directory of your shares. So if you have the home directory shared and all your users have access, put a canary file there. The canary file is going to be, think of it as a honeypot. It's going to look attractive. The threat actors are going to want to go look at it because it's something that they're going to hold for ransom or threaten to expose. You know, you can call it anything you want. Name the file 2025 master payroll, but it's not going to have that good payroll information in it. And you're going to put it in as a canary file. And anybody that goes poking around and attempts to tamper with it, read, rename, encrypt, delete, we're going to block them. So that's, again, another layer of protection to add to what we're doing. You also want to monitor for those detected and blocked users. So it'll be in the AV message queue, and those are the message IDs. So make sure you're monitoring for those. This is something your security team needs to know about. If somebody's been detected doing that, you need to know about it. You need to react quickly because there is a problem in the network. All right, so you got your anti-ransomware configured. Now we know that we are monitoring for that behavior. And, you know, I'm always saying, you may have heard me say it before, it's not if you're going to get hit by ransomware, it's when and how bad is it going to be. Really what we want to do here is to reduce that blast zone and make sure that the IFS is not damaged widely in one of those attacks. Okay, I promised some additional features that we have added to been in the software actually since for a while for most of them, but things that you might not have focused on. We do, as I said, focus so much on the virus scanning, that critical component there. Now we're really also focusing on the anti-ransomware, but that's not all there is to it. Security is all about the layers and doing all of the things that we can to add additional security to the system. One of the things we have in the tool, and I mentioned at the beginning, object integrity scanning. So this is going to actually look at your native objects on the system for any tampering. Whether you're scanning those those IBM libraries for missing or invalid digital signatures. I don't know if you know this or not, but IBM's been digitally signing all of their objects since B5R1. I actually went and found the information on it. There was a presentation they'd done back in 2001 talking about digital signatures and how to set it up. Vendors, we're not signing that stuff. You should see how complicated it is, because you as the customer are going to have to set up the digital certificate manager. It's a lot of work. So your native IBM objects are going to be signed out. So you want to make sure that you're checking those signatures, that they are in fact still valid. If they're not, it's been tampered with. You need to reach out to IBM and say, hey, I need a new copy of this object. There are some caveats there. For a while there, they've been copying commands with the new OS levels. So you'll find some of the old commands are in fact going to be flagged as signature not valid, or proxy commands also get tagged. But you need to be looking at this. Somebody creates a program on your system or tampers with an IBM program to do something that is not expected, you need to know about that. And also your user libraries, looking for programs that have been patched to do something inappropriate. There is some valid use for that, but it should be well known and it should be documented. For example, tool I used to work with allowed you to look at another user's interactive job, actually look in that job to see what the user was doing, even send commands and take control of it. In order to do that, you had to patch that program to act as a system state program, to be a part of the operating system. But you need to know when those things are on your system. So this is where that object integrity scan is going to be very beneficial. You'll get a report similar, there's a little screenshot there of the report that comes out of that. And you'll be able to review it and work with IBM or the vendors that have the objects that were flagged. You can schedule this to run. You don't need to run this weekly. You can run it quarterly, monthly, yearly, or maybe after you load a new program on your system, a new application, rerun it. You update your PTFs, OSPTFs, go ahead and run the object integrity scan again. Validate that all those signatures are still valid on your IBM objects. Mail scanning. Are you guys sending mail from your system? You probably should be scanning to make sure that you're not sending malware off the system. So the QMSF mail scanning is going to scan mail that is sent through SMTP off of your IBMI, and you can either delete an infected message or you can forward it to an administrator. Be cautious if you're forwarding it. It's going to get flagged by your using Outlook, whatever your mail security program is, it's going to tag it. So work with your security team to ensure that you have a process in place. You don't want to open an email that is infected, but best practice, right? You don't want to be sending out malware off the system. So this is going to scan that mail before it's sent. If it is found to be infected, it will be removed. If you select delete, if you set forward, it will forward it on. And it will log in that AV message queue that the email was infected and what it was infected with. So you're going to know what's going on. All right, last thing here for the additional features. the Forge Application Hub with our Powertech Antivirus server. So this interface allows you to centrally manage virus definition updates and scan tasks for those IBMI partitions. It also allows you to manage your AIX and Linux partitions on Power. So this is really where you're going to have that hub. If you have a combination of IBMI partitions, AIX, Linux partitions, having it all in one place is going to be really helpful. If you've got maybe, let's say, 6 or more Powertech Antivirus instances, partitions, this might be helpful in allowing you to do that. Right now, we don't have the anti-ransomware functionality in it, so you still have to manage that on the green screen in the EV menu, but this could give you that quick visibility. So it is additional configuration. There's going to be a Linux server involved to run the Forge Application Hub and PTAB server from. So there is some additional requirements with that. So if you are interested, we do have documentation on the support portal, and you can get assistance from the support team as well if necessary. We also do a lot of services. So if customers, you guys need to do some additional configuration using your services hours to have us walk you through step by step all of those things, that's really where you're going to get that benefit. All right, let's talk about the resources available to you guys. Support portal, I've mentioned it multiple times here. You can go straight to the Powertech Antivirus in the support portal, or you can navigate to that information. You're going to find the knowledge base. Login's not required for this one. The knowledge base in the support portal is going to have current version and OS compatibility charts. You can see which OS level, which version of Powertech Antivirus you need. Release notes, so understanding all the things that we've changed and added with each new release. Again, I don't remember if I mentioned it or not, but the current shipping version is 8.13, so you should be at 8.13. And there's a whole bunch of other knowledge base articles out there. One of the ones I mentioned was that change only. So speeding up those scans, there are 2 different articles that address that you can use for reference. Documentation, there is login required, but you'll be able to get to the user guides, implementation guide, and the downloads, which is where you're going to be able to download the software itself. There are previous versions available too. If you guys have a system that's stuck on an old OS level, that's going to be available there as well. We've got links to the documentation and the knowledge base resources as well on that downloads page. And that one does have a login required. So if you guys do not have credentials for the support portal, you can request access and we'll get that set up for you. Always important to have that information available. All right, next steps. What are you guys going to do? All right, you sat here and listened to me talk for 40 minutes about Powertech Antivirus and all the things it can do. You can set up a health check with our team. We are happy to do that quick health check, run through all those things we were just talking about, making sure that things are set up correctly so that it is going to give you that maximum protection on the system. So you can drop it in the questions panel here in the webcast, and we'll follow up with you on that, or reach out to your account executive and they'll get you set up with a health check. So that's an option. Another option is to run a security scan, not to be confused with the virus scan. So a security scan is 30,000-foot view of your holistic view of your IBMI security. Looks at 6 areas of security on the system, produces a report that you can keep, runs in just a matter of minutes. It's free, which is super cool. The security scan will do an hour review with you as well and walk through all of the information that it found. So this is really where you're going to get that big picture. Check in to see what's happening on your system. This is also the source of our State of IBMI Security study we do every year. And that is pretty well known at this point. People look to that to see what's happening with security on IBMI. And this is where that information comes from. It is anonymous, so when you run it, if you submit it for our security study, we're not going to know it was you. So don't be embarrassed if your system doesn't look great. It happens. So definitely encourage doing that. You can do that once a year. We'll go ahead and do that with you, see what kind of changes you've been able to make and how you've moved forward. I do this with even the most secure systems out there. I have customers that have done this for 8 years in a row, and they keep doing more configuration. They keep getting it more and more fine-tuned. But every single session, we find something that can be tweaked to make the system more secure. And it's really security, you have to stay on top of it, making sure that you understand everything that's happening on the system. So if you're interested in that, you can drop a note in the questions panel. We'll also follow up with you, see if that's something you guys are interested in doing. All right, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the panel there. I did promise that I would try to keep this to between 30 and 45 minutes, and I'm pretty close there, 42. So if you guys do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I see somebody is asking for that health check. Absolutely, we'll make sure that you get, we'll contact you. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. This is really about fine-tuning and taking advantage of the security layer you guys are already using, making sure you're getting the most out of it. Really appreciate your time. As I mentioned, we are recording this, so you can go back and review that if that is what you need. Other than that, I really appreciate your time, appreciate your investment in securing your IBMI. Great platform, just got to make sure we're doing all the things. So, all right, if you do have anything else, let me know. You can go to visit the website, email info@fortran.com. Make sure you mention that you attended my webinar, or you can drop it in the questions panel here. Otherwise, you guys have a fantastic day. Appreciate you and look forward to working with you again soon.